Kathy Tossas, and I'm a faculty in the Department of Social and Behavioral Sciences at the VCU School of Population Health. I'm also a member of the VCU Massey Comprehensive Cancer Center, and I serve as a director for an office that's called Catchment Area Data Analytics, which does provide data to inform our community outreach and engagement, as well as our research initiatives and our clinical agenda. I was always certainly interested in health, and I have, in a sense, that typical story. I'm the first in my family to go to college. We talk about being 6 degrees of separation from from a person, from illnesses. And I always say, I'm 1 degree of separation from a lot of the things that we study nowadays. I grew up food insecure. I grew up in an environment that there was a lot of violence. I grew up, just in a place that there was not a lot of access to care. So those things were very present. I was 9 years old when I first learned about cancer. That was my mother was 33 when she got her first cancer diagnosis. I was 12 when I first learned about HIV. My auntie got HIV very early in the epidemic, right? As long as I can remember, there was community violence. All of those things, in a sense, were common occurrences in my life growing up. So always the point is, like, health was always very present, right? And in a sense, health equity before it had a name. So I, went to college for biology thinking I was going to go to med school. But my family didn't have the means to send me to med school, right? Med school, there's application fees, etc. So I landed in a PhD program at University of Michigan first. And eventually from there kind of progressed. I was a basic scientist for many years in my career, for the first 13 years of my career. And then again through, I did a lot of community work, etc. And through a lot of those experiences, I ended up shifting and getting more into public health. And public health is a great fit, unbeknownst to me, in a sense. Public health was very much part of who I am. I always say I'm a cancer health equity researcher. And I say, cancer health equity, cancer health disparities, justice is not just what I do, it's part of who I am. My disadvantages growing up are part of like my superpower, in a sense, sort of like that intuitive understanding. To me, I didn't have to learn this in the classroom. Some of these things are intuitive to me. When we talk about community and engaging communities in research, oftentimes we in the execution, we may bring you in and we want you to sit here and be pretty. The community is an entity to be respected, right? To be elevated, right? The community does not need to be empowered by me. The community already stands in its own power. My job is to be a conduit, right? In whatever way they would want to utilize me, right? To elevate their power, to bring them forth and be like, this is their intelligence, not mine. So I often talk about community intelligence. So when we bring in community, we know that I am actually, I don't speak for communities. I speak alongside of community. For example, before I came here to Richmond, I work also similarly in a cancer center at University of Illinois at Chicago. And we had a project. We had an FQHC clinic partnership in the south side of Chicago, and it was to increase uptake of mammography screening. And I remember, reaching out to the females in the community and trying to engage them in screenings, and them coming back and they were like, yeah, you want to do that, but I want to know, why my babies are dying. My daughter's baby just died, my grandbaby, and so-and-so also had a 1-year-old and they died, and so-and-so. And I heard that, we heard that multiple times. You know what? That one was like, well, let's learn about why the babies are dying. Because at the time, that was a community that, while infant mortality in the U.S. is usually about 5 per 1,000 live births, at one point, the infant mortality in that predominantly Black community was 24 per 1,000 live births. I was like, okay, let me stop, drop, and roll, because are we about health or are we about health? And so, health is broad and holistic, and again, the community deserves our ear and our respect. And that may mean putting your priorities aside to listen, so that then they can open up and it's like, now let's talk about this as well. So this is, to me, the project that we're doing at Charles City County is a really good example of what happens when you build trustworthiness, right? When you're someone that the community can trust. I came here, I'm not from here originally, from Richmond. I moved here from Chicago 4 years ago. I moved here during the pandemic, so nobody knew me. And, one of the first things that Dr. Wynn, who's the Cancer Center director, said to me, I used to work with Dr. Wynn at UIC, was like, let's just do some community projects and show them how we do things, which is it's very collaborative, very much, open, very much not only community-centric, but community-focused, right? Like for us, by us, with us kind of thing, right? So I developed a project that was called Project Coalesce, and I literally for that I was cold calling different folks in the community and cold calling federally qualified health centers, and that project was 2 years, and it was really to learn and engage in some quality improvements around identifying and addressing systemic race-related barriers to colon and cervical cancer in that case. And through that, we kind of began to be known in the community, and through the engagement that was 2 years, and we would meet weekly and learn about quality improvement together, and we would visit the communities and, go to churches and sing at people's churches. And then one good day, I guess somebody was having a conversation with somebody from Charles City County who said, I have a concern. There's like a lot of cancers in our community, and every time I go to church on Sunday, there's somebody else new that has been diagnosed with cancer, and, my mom died of cancer. Lung cancer, and she was never a smoker, and she, was very fit, etc. Somebody should look at that. We have a landfill in our community. Most of us are well water. And that person was Miss Suzanne Brown, who's the leader of the Chickahominy tribe. And somebody said to her, oh, you should talk to Dr. Tossas. Like, I'll introduce you. And so they introduced her to me, and she expressed this to me, and, folks now know this project was featured as part of the State of the University's address last year, and there's a lot of images out there we published. She came with like a little hand-drawn map that I think her cousin had made for her, sort of showing like the blocks, and like, here's my church, here's the tribal center, and here are all the cancers in this different area. This is Mrs. So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so, this person has died, etc. And she was like, I don't know what I don't know, but this just doesn't feel right. And so, I'm an epidemiologist. I'm not an environmental epidemiologist. She was kind of alluding to what we call a cancer cluster. Cancer clusters are very difficult to prove. They take years, and I was like, well, I don't know what we're gonna find, but it is clear. What I always say is that the community has a concern, and so what we need to do is listen to that voice, right? So I need to suspend this belief and take off all of my, little degrees, put them aside and say, Auntie has a concern, right? My cousin has a concern. It's like, dang, we should be looking into that, right? And so that's what I did. So I came back and, I requested some data. There's some calculations that we call a standardized incidence ratio to look and see, is there like, is there an excess cancer rate in those areas? And indeed, we did. We saw that. So we ended up writing a grant together. And when I say together, I mean together, as in they were all part of the process, informing, telling me, how many people we should interview, where are the areas that we should focus on, how do we do this, here are the pieces that this entail. We wrote a grant together. I brought in my colleague, Dr. Maria Thompson, who's a qualitative, researcher as well. We wrote a grant. We got it to explore this situation. And so what they were interested in, they were like, can we like test the water? So basically, again, I'm putting a p-value on some of the things that they already know. And I'm also providing perhaps for them, I'm not providing, but the data is perhaps providing some comfort around, oh, here's what is in your water, and importantly, here's what is not. And so if all it takes is for me to do one water test, right, I may not find anything, but what that means to you is so much more than I may ever, mean to us on the data. So what has happened, and the result of this, again, forget all of the scholarly and academic things. What has resulted from this is that the trustworthiness for VCU and for us as researchers has increased significantly through this project. I used to say, I used to see myself like as unusual and like my path as unusual. And now the more I learn, the more I realize, no, my story is actually very common, right? And there's a lot of us out there. And so I'm happy to be able to share my story and know that there's a lot of folks out there that are going to find commonalities. And so it's interesting because those views around community have in a sense sort of like shift, it's like have come full circle, right? Shifted and then come right back. community is, where you are and the relationships that you build, right? So we have the community, where I work, where I play, where I worship, right? Where I love, where I grow. We have the community, the professional community, right? And so that's you guys here. Community is the place where intelligence, in my opinion, originates, right? So in other words, I think about how many of us go to school to learn things like community-based participatory research, community-engaged research, right? Like all of those are terms and they're frameworks that someone has developed and has studied and has validated and has published papers on it. And when you take that to the community, in a sense, they're like, yeah, that's how we kind of do work. And so sometimes one of my new sort of like silly phrases is that my job, what I see as my job, is putting a p-value on what the community already knows, right? Like, so doing a statistical test to prove perhaps something that the community already knows, right? Which actually relates to what I do today, because part of the problem is like what doesn't get measured can't get improved, right? And so we need to figure out how to collect these kinds of information and be comfortable with the uncomfortable so we can change it, so we can illuminate it, we can change it. I want to be part of our collective healing. And so this work for me, I always say, may my science always serve. I believe that this is definitely my path and my mission, and this is the way in which I was intended to serve and to use my God-given talents. Like if for Christian folks, or the frame their beliefs through the Bible, there's that story in the Bible about the talents and how, God gave this person talents, 3 talents. And this person went and spent them and they were done, right, carelessly. This person went and buried them and wanted to keep them safe. And then this other person went and invested them, right? And when they came back to kind of give accounts for those, it was the person that invested them and really fully utilized them and grew them and shared them, right? That, I guess God was most pleased with. And I believe that this is the way in which I was intended to utilize my talents, right? So that all of these collective experiences and all these stories of who I am and where I came from, right, that inform my work are meant for me to use all of that with then, sort of my intellect and my training to elevate the community voice, to combine that with science so that we can, augment and bring forth the messages and highlight the things that we then need to heal. So I want to be part of the healing. So my work makes me feel excited because, again, it makes me feel like I am fulfilling my mission, which is to serve, and this is the way in which I'm intended to serve.